Okay, we are recording.
Great. Well, I see we have an honorary equity board member joining us today, and Baby Trey. Welcome, Baby Trey. Let's see. So I call this meeting to order, the November meeting of the equity board at 6:05 p.m. Due to the hybrid format of today's meeting, I'd like to start by providing some guidelines. This is a reminder that the meeting is being recorded and that we have live Spanish interpretation happening in the background. We have participants attending in person and others who may be attending by computer or by phone. For all meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently. State your name each time before speaking. If applicable, mute your microphone when not speaking. If having technical issues, try joining the meeting using a different device, such as a smartphone or tablet, or call in using the information in the meeting invitation. And now we will begin by taking a roll call of those board members in attendance. Please say here when Dale calls your name.
Awesome. Lucrecia Choto.
Here.
Tony Curry is absent. Shalonda Fleming.
I'm here.
Indeed you are. Lorna Gilmore.
Here.
Karthik Kashina.
Here.
Nima Kalawi is absent. Helen Kipenje is absent. Ray Manahan.
Here.
Preeti Modipan.
Here.
And Kelly Munn.
Here.
Great.
Oh, and Christina is not with us tonight. She has an excused absence. And so Hillary and Harry are also not on the line this evening.
Good to know. And let's see, Dale, do you know if anyone has signed up to provide public comment?
No one has signed up, but we do have members of the public in attendance this evening.
Okay. Let's see, would anyone in attendance here like to give public comment?
Just happy to be here. Thank you for being here. Same here.
Well, welcome. Glad to have you all here. Let's see. Okay, so moving on to the approval of minutes. Okay, I'd like to invite board members to review the minutes if they haven't had a chance to do so. Let's see, we have minutes from last month's meeting in the packet. I'll give you a couple of minutes to do a quick review and then see if anyone would make a motion to approve.
Yes. Been out and about.
Sure, I can make a motion to approve.
Sure.
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve. Are there any edits to note from anyone? All right. I guess what are we just we're approved? All right. Moving right through the agenda here. So now we are ready for our first main agenda item, which is sustainable purchasing policy with David Reedy. Welcome back, David. And I guess, Dale, is there any other intro that you would like to make up, David?
Not this evening.
Okay.
I'll turn it over to David.
All right, so I'm just getting my slides up. Okay, well, thank you all for having me back before the equity board to talk about sustainable purchasing. I know you've got a packed schedule tonight and a lot of really awesome topics to address, so thanks for making time for me today. Just as kind of as a heads up, my name is David Reedy. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator for the City of Issaquah. And feel free to ask any questions as we go throughout this presentation. There's one main question, two main questions for the board at the very end of this presentation, but for any clarifying questions throughout, I'm happy to answer them as we go. Just a little bit of background. This is the second time I'm coming to the equity board about this topic. I came earlier in the spring before we had actually drafted anything, but just for some initial input. And where we're at right now is we're gearing up to finish this policy. We're hoping to get it adopted by the end of the year. And really we're fine tuning what we've done based on input from the equity board and environmental board back in the spring, based on input from peer jurisdictions, from city staff across the city. The policy, again, was kind of identified as an action within the Issaquah Climate Action Plan. And really the basis of it is that it recognizes that the products and services that we purchase as a city inherently have social, environmental, and economic impacts at their time of purchase and throughout the life cycle of the product or service. So we are aiming to have an internally adopted policy and an implementation guide instead of a council-approved policy, and that's going to allow us to be flexible with the policy. So as we need to make changes, as we need to update it, strengthen it, we can do that a little easier, knowing that the purchasing and procurement landscape changes frequently. Where will the policy make a difference? Simply put, everywhere. We expect implementation to take time. We're not going to change how we do our purchasing overnight, but we're really hoping that this impacts everything we purchase, from food or supplies for an event to our public works projects, our vehicles, things like that. You'll see I threw up a few key opportunities that we can expect that we're hoping will be impacted very strongly by this policy. So, for instance, thinking about what vehicles we purchase, or thinking about which companies we enter into contracts with. Public works projects have huge impacts on our community, right? And so thinking about how do we do procurement within those public works projects. The policy implementation is going to be really the meat of this project, since we can pass a policy, but unless we implement it well, it's not really going to change much. So throughout this whole process, we've been focused on building the staff buy-in, building staff support, and we have a whole host of different products and tools and ideas for how we're going to make sure that sustainable purchasing doesn't just live with me at the city. I am not the procurement specialist for the city. I am sustainability. But really that each person, as they go through procurement at the city, becomes a sustainable purchasing champion. So that includes trainings, it's going to include case studies, a vendor report card that I worked on with Dale, developing language to related to sustainable purchasing to include in our contract templates and into RFP and RFQ examples, so that everybody who contracts with the city knows what we stand for and what our values are. Where we are at, I have version 1.5 of the draft policy and implementation guide. It was a little updated from version 1, so we're at 1.5. We are getting final feedback from staff and from the Environmental and Equity Board. We're going to finish revising, and then it will go up for adoption in front of the senior leadership team and for the city administrator to sign, hopefully this December. And then it's not over at that point. It's implement, monitor, see how we're doing, track how we're doing, revise, and continue to implement. So this is going to be a long, ongoing process. This slide is it's one from the spring as well. This is just to kind of note that we're in that phase 4. We are, or phase 3 right now, at the end of phase 3, and we're getting ready for that phase 4, just adopting the policy. So what I wanted to focus our conversation on today is feedback on the social equity guiding principles for the sustainable purchasing policy. These guiding principles are very important because they are what we're asking staff to apply when they're making purchasing and procurement decisions. What that looks like is going to differ whether we're buying cups or whether we're entering into a service agreement with a contractor, right? Or whatever we're buying. The guiding principles are going to inform and be incorporated into RFPs, into contracts, et cetera. And so this is going to be something that shows the basis of what we believe and what we're trying to aim for throughout city procurement documents. And then as we evaluate what we're doing at the city, we're going to be really basing it on how we're implementing the guiding principles. So these guiding principles are kind of the core of what we're looking at for this policy. So I wanted to share, this is the way we've kind of adopted this. We have an overarching social equity guiding principle, which is this statement here. And then we have detailed social equity guiding principles to provide more nuance and allow staff and contractors we're working with to kind of dig into what we are thinking about. So today, I'm going to be asking for feedback on the overarching guiding principle as well as the detailed guiding principles. One other thing that I will note, sustainable purchasing policies are fairly uncommon for cities our size. Additionally, many sustainable purchasing policies, green purchasing policies focus on the environmental aspect, right? How do we reduce greenhouse gas emissions or environmental pollutants? It is a growing effort, and I think we are kind of at the forefront of that in trying to incorporate social equity into our sustainable purchasing policy all in one go, right? So trying to consider environmental, social equity, and economic considerations as we approach our procurement. So with that, our overarching social equity guiding principle, as it's currently written, says that the city seeks to purchase products and services from organizations that embody current best practices in equity and that have minimal to no negative human health impacts. I will then go to our detailed social equity guiding principles, and I will not read them all, but I'll kind of leave them up on the board for us to look at for a minute. Okay, I'll open it up to comments now. And again, the feedback I'm looking for, hopefully, is any comments, thoughts on the detailed guiding principles or the overarching guiding principle. I'm also happy to answer just general questions, as well as identify anything that's missing from this.
I think our group had this conversation last month, but I see it applying to this group, to this principle also. I think you're going to have to define several of the words over here.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about socially disadvantaged person, I'd love to see a definition of that. Economically, I feel like that's a little bit easier because you can get some tax numbers, details on that, but socially is definitely something to define, even minority, because what does minority mean anymore when we have especially some groups that are a lot, Issaquah has changed in some areas, especially outlying areas. So there are definitely a couple, and then socially responsible manner. I see that also as another word needing to be defined. So I think when we're looking at this, people are going to come back and say, what does that mean? So I'd love to be able to see a glossary of terms as how the city is using it, and so that we also can be using it and keeping that in mind in our practices. And then doing a education for the city so they know what that means. And that becomes part of their vocabulary that they've internalized.
Absolutely.
I think it's a really great idea, Lorna, because simply in terms of even people who are applying, to be considered, for them to be able to say, here's how we meet this criteria, right? Because if you don't know,
You can't see yourself in this.
Right.
So I need to know that I'm a socially disadvantaged person versus not a socially, like economically disadvantaged. Pretty much I think people would know that part. And also minority, because I can see some people saying that they are a minority and we don't define them as a minority, as other groups might not think that they're minority, but they are.
Yes.
So who is a minority group? Like, are we talking about LGBTQ groups as a minority group? Like, what does that mean? And who are you looking for in this? Is it specific to that business versus is it specific to, or like very general, broad term that you're looking at?
Yeah, so just, we do have a glossary. I think some of these terms are missing from that glossary, so that's a really great point and a good opportunity for me to relook at that and make sure it's, some of these terms are better defined. So that's a great point. Thanks.
I think that third bullet is hard to digest a little bit. Can I get a little more specific? So say there's two businesses that want to set up somewhere on Front Street. And then we have to look at it from an equity lens between one versus the other. Are you going to look to us to say, what's the data that we're using to compare the two to say, well, that one's going to be more equitable than the other one?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I think one of the challenges with this policy is implementing social equity in decision-making around, say, if we're going to contract with company A or company B, is super complex, right? And very difficult. And the different purchasers and procurement folks across the city are going to be coming into the space with different backgrounds and perspectives and ideas like that. So the way it's currently set up, we do not have, say, a decision-making tool that says choose company A over company B if it meets XYZ criteria, recognizing that each individual procurement decision is unique and difficult to figure out. What we do have is in the implementation guide, we have and are hoping to continue to build out additional tools to help folks understand how to look for support diverse businesses, how to kind of think about applying that in their decision making, right? So that's to say that we're not done with building those tools yet to support staff, but we have some and we're hoping to build more.
I think I really appreciate the challenge across, I think, the sustainability element, the social equity element, and then maybe the cost element. And when those are all in tension, how do you make a decision? So I think that's an important thing to keep thinking about. The other thing I'm thinking about when I see, like existing equity standards and third-party certifications and kind of being for businesses to be tagged as a woman or minority-owned business, that takes capacity on the part of that vendor or organization to provide this kind of documentation or get this kind of certification. And so I'm concerned that consequence of doing this is that small businesses may not have the capacity to compete on even the application process. To put a bid in or something like that. So I don't know how to make this like a low barrier process at the same time. Because I imagine, bigger companies would have all this paperwork ready to go and, just submit. And I don't know if the smaller businesses, which are more likely to be women or minority, would have that. Yeah. So that's just one thing about an unintended consequence maybe of building out such a robust, policy.
Absolutely. And I think that hopefully goes to the idea with the policy is in that it is considerations, it's guidance for folks. And so hopefully the way we intend to implement it, and again, tracking and evaluation will be critical to make sure that we don't fall into those unintended consequences, or to recognize when we do and adjust. But there should be the opportunity to, say, give points to folks or give preference to folks if they explain how they meet these standards, right? And that might be, we don't have this certification because the certification is hard for us to get, but this is who we are and we do meet these criteria, right? And then that should be able to support staff in saying, okay, we recognize and accept that, and right, we're going to consider that in our matrix of consideration or whatever it might be.
David, can you speak to how you're going to be applying this policy to existing relationships and businesses that you currently have? Will they be given the opportunity to say, you know what, currently we don't meet this environmental threshold that you're holding out for us, but give us a year to meet it, or something along those lines? Have you given thought to that?
Yeah, so we have been developing a vendor report card, which is going to help us get a lot, because I think one of the challenges we have, recognizing, I think that we have limited staff capacity here at a small city. We have not gone through all of our contracts or purchasing yet. However, we have a vendor report card, and the idea is that we're going to get a better view of the landscape of our purchasing, of our partnerships, of who we buy things with. And there's not going to be a moment of, okay, you don't meet these criteria, you're out, right? But instead, it'll have, the idea is that from this moment on, it'll allow us to open up the conversation with those partners to say, hey, this is what we've decided this is what we recognize we believe in as a city, and this is what we're aiming for. How can, in partnership with you, we get there? Or the other thing that this could allow us to do is empower staff to say, hey, this company we're working with doesn't meet these criteria, and
they don't want to.
And they don't want to, and we're looking for a way to maybe find a different partner.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
So over the summer, we had a joint meeting with the Economic Vitality Commission, and they had their unveiling a plan as well. And so that just has me thinking about local businesses. And are there any criteria or provisions around supporting local businesses as part of this work?
Great question. No, sort of, though. After many conversations with legal and our finance team, we are not able to put in preferences for local businesses because it would jeopardize state funding for the city. There are some state laws that, according to legal, prevent us from doing that. However, I believe there is a way to get around that, in that within the environmental section, we do have the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions as a stated goal, right? And so a staff member could make the argument that going with a local business reduces the greenhouse gas emissions for travel, for the transport of goods and services, right? And so it is, I believe there are workarounds to support local businesses, but legally we are not allowed to include any specific language around local businesses.
So I think that leads me to wonder, because I think part of that conversation was doing supports on how we build local businesses. I think one of the things that we discussed at that time was maybe doing some like workshops or how-tos. So would that still exist? Because I see that being connected with the reviewing existing business standards and like checking to see how green they are and stuff like that, and how do we help them know and build their business acumen, is I guess what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think sustainability, our team has worked with our economic development team over the last year to identify opportunities to support local businesses, especially in environmental aspects. I think there is the opportunity with this policy and this is kind of recognizing implementation will take time. Some of my hopes are to get a better landscape of who works in the city that kind of helps or that implements practices that meet our sustainable purchasing policy guide. Right, so I think there are ways that we will be able to do that through this policy. They're not necessarily identified yet, but then there are the other sustainability efforts to run programs that support local businesses, such as our Clean Buildings program, and then also developing some toolkits and guides to support local businesses as they address environmental issues.
I have another question.
Please.
So you said near the top of the presentation that you know that staff buy-in is really important because these are guidelines or guiding principles, right? So it seems like it's more of an opt-in versus an opt-out. But are there ways to strongly encourage and move towards requiring these kinds of considerations systematically?
Yes, I think one of the ideas with the policy is hopefully starting where we're at, and then as we evaluate and determine how it's being implemented, potentially strengthening it as we go. As part of the implementation guide, we do hope, well, we plan to meet with departments across the city and teams across the city to identify opportunities to apply the sustainable purchasing policy, to identify areas where staff need extra support, right? Recognizing again that, you know, figuring out how to support diverse businesses is very difficult for a lot of purchasing decisions, right? So meeting with staff, identifying opportunities, identifying where folks need support, and then trying to make sure that we're kind of doing a slow build of implementation, right? I think there are some opportunities for many sustainable purchasing policies. There are some requirements specifically laid out. Generally, they lie more on the environmental side of things, like you have to buy 100% recycled paper or something. One of the challenges we face in our city, given staff capacity, is a lot of those cities have dedicated sustainable purchasing policy specialists who their job is to do this policy. And I have been told by our finance team that they do not have the ability for that. And so a lot of this will be me, which is great. I'm very excited to do it. However, I also have other tasks. So that's one of the challenges we face with the requirement side of things, is making sure that we try to balance supporting our staff without having to go through and look at every single purchase. But I will say that's not to say we're not going to do requirements in the future. We're trying to see what we can manage first.
I am very intrigued by the idea of the sustainability report card. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about it and whether equity is within that.
The vendor report card?
Yes.
Yes. So that is something that has been rolled out for a month. I don't know if I was supposed to mention it or not.
You can totally mention it.
Okay, it's been mentioned. It's been rolled out very in an initial form right now. It's been rolled out for about a month. The idea is to get a better sense about who we're doing business with as a city, right? Who we're entering into contracts with. What are our experiences with those contractors? Were they great? Did they leave something to be desired? Are they somewhere in between, right? There are specific questions in there based on how the company or the vendor meets or does not meet our strategic goals as a city, and then also our sustainable purchasing goals. So there is kind of this funky balance of things getting rolled out before the policy is adopted, and that's okay, we think, right? We're trying things out. So there are specific, I think there's one or two questions specifically around relation to the sustainable purchasing policy there.
And who's doing the grading?
For the vendor report card, the staff who have the hold the contract.
Okay.
So it would be like, for us in sustainability, we would fill it out for, say, our contractor who's running the clean building program.
Got it. And then that's all being collated to you? Today.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can share a little bit more. The direct question is, did they meet the sustainability or social equity goals outlined in the contract? Because we know that those goals are going to be different depending on the type of work. And we want the report card to be general enough that ultimately we have a tool that staff across the city can look to and say, oh, I'm in need of project management service. I want to look and see who are some people that have done project management for the city before. Let me see how they performed, who they worked with. We're finding that we haven't always kept a good paper record of the performance of how folks have performed on our contracted work. And those are public dollars that we need to really make sure that we know the work is being done, but we need to make sure we carry that knowledge beyond a single person and a single project.
I can appreciate that.
And as a note, with the sustainable purchasing policy language getting introduced into contracts and to templates and things, it will be easier and easier for us to say, did they or did they not follow the guiding principles?
As a teacher, knowing that our Black and brown kids sometimes get much lower grades, I am wondering, will the group know, or the individual or company know their grades so that they have ability to improve?
The intent, yeah, that's a great question, because the intent of the report card is to set people up to have an end, or actually maybe not even an end of contract conversation, but to have a feedback conversation, rather than just a contract ending and not having any conversation. And I think also the intent is to, and this has been really fun, and having conversations with departments around the report card as we've been developing it, is hearing people say like, oh, this is making me think differently even about how I'm structuring my contracts, because I'm not sure I'm setting people up for success. So the hope would be that it's changing staff behavior too on the front end to put together RFPs and then put together contracts that are structured in a way that help people succeed. And then I think we can also, part of the reason it's coming to me on the performance side, is I can monitor, who's getting high grades and who's not. And let me look more closely at what makes up those vendors. Because I think there's a lot of explicit bias, but there's also a lot of implicit bias. And we don't even know necessarily.
That's where I think my concern was stemming from. So awareness, training on that would be key. But I really appreciate your comment, because that's being a good teacher, right? Setting the vendor up for success by making sure that their expectations.
And making sure they know.
Right.
Right? Like that, no one wants to walk away and not know how they did, and then find out the next time they go to apply and then use all this time and effort.
But also knowing what the expectation, because most of our people of color will say they don't know what the rules of engagement are, because the culture is different as they're working, and so they might not be coming in from a culture that interacts in a certain way. So how the vendor is going to show up is going to be important. And so they need to know what their rules of engagement were, not just how they did, but also what were the expectations for them as they came in, because this is going to be such an important review score.
Right. And I think that goes back to what my comment was, right? Like, are we just cutting ties immediately, or are we giving people an opportunity to engage and grow? And right. So I think this is just really great.
This is the tip of the iceberg with procurement too. This is, we're talking about vendor report card assumes that someone that's made it in the door, won the contract, completed the work, and we're not even necessarily looking at, who's applying and not getting in the door. So there's a lot of potential with this work.
Yes, there's a lot to do here, which is great.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, feedback?
I think that the takeaway for me is that the guiding principles sound right, and so it's a matter of how they get implemented and play out. Yeah, so I like how you've got that evaluation kind of built into it.
Yes, right from the beginning, evaluation is key. Making sure we're thinking about how this impacts our procurement. Well, thank you all very much. I am always available, so please reach out if you have other questions for me. And thank you all for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. We'll expect to see you back with a different topic in the new year.
Yes, get ready for
So
more.
Equity Board All-Star, David Reed. Great, I love, I was gonna vamp an intro for Ryan, but Jeff is gonna be here and do it for us, which is great.
All right, so I guess we're ready to talk about the recreation registration process, and Jeff, you're gonna open it up.
I would love to. Thank you. Equity Board members, great to see you all. Jeff Watling, Parks and Community Services Director. Had the privilege of presenting January of last year, gave a little overview of our department. Thought I'd start with that again as a brief refresher. I know Brian is sharing his screen, I believe.
Yep, get it up right now.
So if you want to go to the next screen, Brian. You know, I know you've had a chance to get updates from multiple departments throughout the months. Again, happy to come back again. This time, you know, really looking forward to diving a little bit into one of our specific areas where we're looking at applying the equity framework. As this slide shows, little civics 101 as you're learning city business. Parks and Community Services, I consider one of the 4 Ps of departments, sort of the outward facing departments, right? Public Works, Planning, Parks, Police, right? Those 4 sort of big departments that more often than not are interacting with residents in such a wide variety of ways very directly. So as one of those outward facing departments, we really take seriously our priority, our stance, our posture as serving all residents of Issaquah. And so, again, you know, great to be back, share a little bit about our equity journey. I think equity journeys are so important for any agency, and that the agency's having an equity journey. We as individual professionals are on our own equity journey. We as teams, and I think I'll give an overview of just the diversity of teams we even have within Parks and Community Services. So, next slide, Brian, kind of begins to touch on that, I believe.
Just one second, I hit it. For some reason, it wasn't going to the next slide. Oh, you got a preview. Wow, my mouse works. But yeah, there you go.
That's all good. So as a department, we are really comprised of 5 divisions, 5 very distinct service groups, 5 very distinct sets of services and programs that we deliver to the residents of Issaquah. Starting in the upper left, Recreation Services. Brian Bernson is our manager. Recreation Services really is 4 business units within recreation. The community center, our community center programs, our athletics programs, the Pickering Barn, things like the farmers market there at Pickering Barn, the senior center. And then last but not least, the pool comprises our recreation services group. I'm going to skip over administration. I'll do that last. Arts, Amy Dukes, our arts manager, works just fantastically with the Arts Commission, really looking at how are we telling Issaquah's story through arts and history and culture. You maybe have met Jacob Two Trees, our most recent art installation. I know, Lucretia, you were very involved in that project as well. Very well received here within the Issaquah community for certain. Our park operations team is overseen by Rick Still. Park operations is really the stewards of about 1,500 acres of parks, open space, trails. Again, our commitment is really making sure that's accessible for all residents and visitors. Our Human Services Division, you're very familiar with our outstanding manager there, Monica Negrilla, the Human Services team, the journey we've been on in terms of just really creating a human services team and really a much more diverse set of services to really meet individuals and residents where they're at in either times of crisis or in need. Fantastic team there. Our Park Planning and Development Group, led by Robin Spear, who's our manager there. They're really our sort of our development team, right? So when we're looking at acquisitions, when we're looking at reinvestment, capital projects within the park system and trail system, that is led by our park planning and development group. And then last division is administration, myself and Hasanti Piacena. If you met Hasanti, she's our, does so many things. She's really our business analyst for supporting the whole group. The two of us do everything we can to support 5 very hardworking teams in what they deliver. All that to say in the introduction, and when you look at those 5 divisions, next slide, Brian.
Yeah, the down button doesn't work, I'm going with
Sticky wicket.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, so, when you look at those 5 sets of things that we do and services we deliver, it really comes down to 2 common threads in so many ways. Everything we do ties into these 2 things. We invest in people and we invest in places. In the places, as I said before, we take seriously our stewardship role of as Issaquah resident, 40,000 people own the parks, open space, and trails of this community. We are merely stewarding it for you. Equally as so, we manage some really, really important public facilities, the community center, the pool, the senior center, and Pickering Barn. And then in our investments in people, everything we do is about people and about our residents and visitors, providing those programs and services that help build community, help support family, help support residents wherever they're at. Yeah, so that's, I think, a real good overview. Tonight's conversation, as I hand this over to Brian, really is, as I said, we've been looking at the equity framework in so much of what we do. Farmers Market, for example, this is the first year that we've offered EBT and SNAP. We're so excited to provide that. I think with that service, as well as just the outstanding work of Kelly Day and the market, probably had its most successful summer. And we just look forward to so much more happening there at the market. So many examples of how we're looking at equity and equality in what we do. Lucretia, I'll point you out again. You're familiar with a park project we have going at Hillside Park.
I'm so excited about that.
And very excited as well. But public engagement, as we invest in capital projects within Issaquah, public engagement is a really, really important step of what we do. We're building parks, we're reinvesting in parks for residents. And so how do we engage? Are we engaging in a right way that is equitable? And we're hearing all voices as we're thinking about our park system. We have a park system plan update going on right now. How, as we're sending out that survey, how are we making sure we're getting feedback from all residents? Tonight, though, we really want to turn and look at recreation. We offer a lot of very popular, very successful recreation programs. In particular, our summer day camps programs and our swim lesson programs. Looking at it merely from an operational lens, we'd say it's a huge success. Those programs fill up in 10 minutes. Putting an equality lens and an equity lens on that, it's like, you know what? Everything filling up in 10 minutes might not necessarily be success. Tonight is really just an initial conversation we want to have with all of you as we start to look at that and how might we begin to consider some different registration approaches, look at registration a little bit differently, and again, making sure we're sort of seeing it through that equality and equity that we still want to achieve. So really look forward to the discussion tonight. Brian.
I'm Brian Burnson, the Recreation Manager for the Parks and Community Services Department. So thank you for having me here. To tie into the farmers market, we implemented the EBT SNAP, and next year we're leaning into doing the EBT SNAP match program that goes along with that. So we're really excited, and yeah, kudos to Kelly Diane and our finance department and work, because it's been a lot of work to put all the ducks in a row. As we've been going through, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of stuff that goes into this, and it's a big lift on finance to get it set up and a big lift on our team, but it's been awesome because it's a really great program. as Jeff mentioned, we have a variety of different services within recreation services. With our Julius Bone Pool, we have athletics and park rentals, which is all of our fields used by youth and adult sports. We have picnic shelter rentals, field rentals, all that kind of stuff. Our senior center does a lot of great programs. I'm not going to go into any depth. If you ever want to know more about each one of these, I would be happy to share. But since we're talking registration tonight, I could talk all night on each one of these divisions or teams. Pickering Barn, as Jeff mentioned, then we have the community center as well. And I will take a quick chance to shout out the people that work within this division, because they love people. They love serving people, and they work really hard doing it. They take their job seriously, and they, like I said, and they have a lot of fun doing it. So if you see them, hardworking people, but they look like they're having a blast because they truly do enjoy what they're doing. So had to give a little quick shout out to the team. And I'm working my mouse so I don't fly through some video. On the purpose here, we got evaluating equity in the recreation registration process. That's sort of our topic for this evening. We're at the very, like Jeff said, we've done some work. This one we're at the very beginning stages of and wanted to share it with you. So thank you for taking the time to listen to me share it with you. Little bit about me. I want you to know how my heart works. Sometimes my heart and my mouth don't work perfectly, so what comes out might not be perfect. Same with my brain. The problem's my mouth, because sometimes the heart and mind are good, but the mouth sometimes doesn't get it out as well as I'd like it to. So just so you know, these are all open-handed things. There's nothing close-handed here. It's all open-handed. It's open for discussion. It's open for betterment. We're not holding tightly to any of this. So just so you know, I like to share that because I can speak pretty passionately. Sometimes you might think, oh my gosh, Brian's tied on to that one. Not so, right? So thank you. That's my own little caveat, I guess. At the end of the presentation, I'll bring this slide up again, just to get us started on some of the discussion topics we have for this evening. Just like I said, these are just starters, right? Does the board have any potential changes to the approach I'm going to share? Is there other information that you think would be helpful for an equitable analysis? What could lead to more access? It really is what we're looking for. Are there other recommendations for reviewing the recreation registration process? Are we missing anything? That's kind of what we're looking to hear from you on tonight, if we could, at the end of the thing, as well as anything else that you might want to add to the discussion. Quickly, before we get into the registration process, wanted to share a little bit. Thanks, Dale, for suggesting that I should maybe share a little bit about our scholarship program. That we've had this scholarship program for quite a while. The scholarship program has been in place for many years. It was recently reviewed, improved, and approved by city administration and our council. This slide just shows some of the 2022 data that we collected. Real quickly, and as you can see, in 2022, we gave out, just a 15,000 was allocated for scholarships. As of mid-October, we're at 16,500 already that we've allocated. So that's trending in the right direction as we promote this program and get it out to the community more. We're excited to see it grow as well as more people get served through that.
Can I point out something about the scholarship program too, Brian?
Please.
Thanks for the time, team. So you may recall that I think when I spoke with you all in January, those of you that were here, we were just reviewing the scholarship program. And as Brian said, the council approved it, sort of reapproved it. We made some pretty significant modifications to it that I think are important to point out. Historically, we've had a scholarship program, but it was based upon we needed to have a matching amount of cash to complement the scholarship. What we found was we weren't necessarily poised to offer as many scholarships as were needed. Working with the city council, having conversation with the community, we now have a scholarship program that isn't dependent upon cash available. The council has basically authorized us to reduce the fees. So as someone applies, and if someone's eligible for a scholarship, we are merely reducing the fees. So basically having a sliding scale fee that is allowing and making sure that fee isn't a barrier to someone who wants to register for the program. And so something we feel like we can market and advertise and offer in a much more equal and equitable way. So we're really sort of excited about how these new numbers and this new data starts to track. So thanks, Brian.
Oh, no, thank you for bringing that up. I actually had that on my list of items that in case the questions came up on that one, because there's, like you said, there's a lot of great work that went on with that scholarship program, and it was greatly improved. And like anything, we continue to evaluate and monitor it because it changes, and we try to make it better and better each time.
Actually, Brian, can I
Yeah.
ask, what's the eligibility criteria for scholarships?
I can send, we have a whole form that talks about, like, I can send you that if you'd like to see it.
No, just wanting to just know, like, is it income,
Oh.
other kind of criteria?
Yes, thank you. No, it's based off the income, and it's based off of what is the standard? However, do you recall what the standard is, that it's based on?
Standard, the school districts reintroduce.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it translated?
What's that?
Is it
translated? I believe.
I don't think so. Right now it isn't. That's one of the things that's on our list of items to address. Yes, that's.
It's just that for us, sometimes a lot of our families can't fill out that free and reduced lunch form, and so we have to fill it out for them.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
And so it is accessible in a translated format on the website, and yet we have to help some families complete it. And to me, those are the families that have the highest need. And so one of my questions will be, who is helping families fill out registration and scholarship forms?
Yeah.
And
That's
this might not even be feasible, but is there a way that when they're filling out the free and reduced lunch form, that they could become aware of the scholarship for participating? Because I'm imagining, if I had this need and after school, I didn't know where my child was going to go, but there is something that they could be doing through the rec department, right? Becoming aware at that point, so that now you're feeding multiple birds with one hand, right? You're helping them fill out the form.
Question and say yes. If you send that to us, we can add what that looks like on. I can ask.
You're with the school district?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Right.
If we can add, because we do have right now, it says Comcast,
Yeah, so
Yes.
other
Right.
services.
So
you
we can
don't-
put that on there. The only thing is, I don't know how you're going to find out which students are eligible, because we don't share that information.
Right, but as long as, we wouldn't necessarily need to know who's eligible, as long as they were
Informed.
aware that.
Well, I love the idea. Informing them would be good to make sure they know about that, so they access it or not. That's a great, that's a good
Even like-
suggestion.
A QR code that they can scan with the school district so that they have it now, right?
It takes you to the,
Yeah, it takes you to there. This is what is available to you, and now there's more communication.
Great examples of, again, now a program that's not dependent upon us getting cash donations to set a cap on scholarships. Great.
She just asked if you use the Peach Jar, which is also in the school district, to advertise.
Yeah.
For the scholarship programs, because I don't know if you still do it, but my daughter would come home every year with a little booklet on all the.
So we utilize Peach Jar on a number of occasions. We utilize the school district to promote our programs.
No, great suggestion. You'll see that's going to tie into our discussion too, which is perfect as I get to a couple more slides later. Currently, we accept registrations in 3 forms right now. It's online, in person, and by phone. Pretty much any way you want to, we'll take your registration.
And the phone has a translator option.
We use a service that the city has for translation when needed. So that's kind of how we've done that. What we call a service so that we can access an intermediate, access a third party for translating between the two.
My question, I think, is more the line of, I've registered my daughters for programs in the summer.
Yeah.
And I know I'm there March 8th at 8 o'clock so that I can log in. I mean, that's probably one of the dates many years ago.
Yeah.
This is the conversation, yes.
It
You're right.
was hard. It was hard. My husband and I would both be sitting on the computer ready to go. And I tell him, you will get in, and I will get in, and we will get these classes. Because it was a big deal, right? And here we are people who know technology, have laptops at home. So I think one of the big lessons I learned over COVID was not all of our families have computers at home.
Right.
Many of our families are using this, so I honestly don't know how accessible registering for your programs is on a phone, because I've discovered in the past 4 years that many parents are trying to do everything on their phone, which not everything is feasible on the phone, including like some of our processes and forms that we in the district have.
Yeah.
So it becomes a barrier. And so we have people who do the registration. So my question is in person, before you had it online, you had a lovely line in front of the community center.
Yes, you have to take a number and wait your,
I was there even before the number system.
I love
So
it.
you just
Just line up.
Sunday camp days.
I'm dating myself now, my children, but we would take turns and we were there. So my question is that still an option? And those people who are standing in line, because I mean, there were some classes by 8:40, someone would say, hey, I got, in, did you get it? Oops, sorry, 8:40, it's already closed. And so now I'm wondering, a parent calling in, are they just on the waiting list? Because the waiting list then becomes a very scary place to be when you have severe need over the summer. And there's so much uncertainty and in life full of uncertainty, that's a huge barrier. Like, do we wait? Do we take the chance? And for someone like me, maybe I'm okay, financially to sign up for other programs, but someone who has an equity. So what kind of priority are those families getting to ensure that they are higher on the list, because they're not going to be people like me getting in at 8:05 because of the online portal access. And if they're on the phone or in person and they're waiting for either someone to come to help them translate or to get in, so if they're in line, will they get access into the class?
One of your questions is.
Precisely the discussion.
Is the discussion we're wanting to have and really entering into and walking into is saying, we have some immensely popular programs that fill up super fast, too fast.
Pre-K, the little ones, the little ones.
Oh, it just, yeah. So, how do we want to approach this? And how do we want to be a lot more intentional?
I feel like we almost developed this presentation together. It's right in line with what we're talking. We're at the very front end of everything you're talking about, right? And here we're talking about capacity, but it does tie into all of that as well, because it can't not, right? Great suggestions.
And is there room for growth? I mean, if you are already getting to capacity, is there room to have more sessions?
I'm going to tell you some of the things we're doing for how we're trying to address some of the capacity, especially in some of our larger programs. Some ideas we have, and like I said, I want to hear, it's kind of crazy. Like I said, the stuff we're talking about is actually coming up in our presentation here. But yes, there are some plans to do that I will cover.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just had a conversation with City Council last night as we're looking at the 2024 budget. We have some opportunities to expand our camp capacity next summer by about 40 or 50 slots each week. So that's gonna help.
That was one of them. Yep. As we're leading into the equity framework and the question, just as we were talking about this, what led us to discuss a number of potential registration barriers, right? So we talked about just exactly that. The capacity was one we talked about. Language, technology, internet access. What are the times and days that we're holding registrations? All those things came to mind, and we were, our first bite of this big apple, if you will, we decided to work with starting with the capacity question, right? So a few of the equity framework questions that we engaged with, are those three right there. What evidence has supported every conclusion I've drawn, and how I challenged and supported assumptions. And then Jeff touched on this earlier, was, we make an assumption that, hey, classes are filling quick, and in 10 minutes is, the pool swim lessons. If you've ever tried to swim, to register for a swim lesson, they fill literally in like a minute. Mm-hmm. It's that quick. And assumptions like, hey, great, we're popular, everything's going well, but that's, our staff, our team wanted to challenge ourselves to those previously held assumptions regarding registrations and whether or not, our customers have an equal access to that. And that's the question, right? And I think we know the answer of it, but that's the question we're posing, right? And then notice that what you were mentioning is right down that aisle too. It encompasses all of that stuff. The second question How have we sacrificed in the experience of marginalized people for the comfort and safety of those holding privilege, the majority population, stakeholders not negatively impacted. Our team wants to challenge the way that things have been done, and then also to lean into conversations that are uncomfortable, because sometimes they can be, right? And then third, I have to read off my notes because I can see it better on my paper here than up there. That's an age thing. I think that's hitting me a little bit now. Who will benefit or be burdened? Yeah, I'm like, well, I'm still trying to pull off the squint a little bit, but yeah. Who will benefit or be burdened by the particular decision? Our team wants to understand the impact the decisions that we make have on customers and staff, and to be aware of the unintentional consequences of things that we choose to, or that we're thinking about too. Like, if we make this decision, what might be an unintentional? We don't want to have a negative impact to something we think is positive, right? As we're thinking through that. And some of our registration observations, they're going to sound really familiar because we've talked about a bunch of them already. We have a lot of programs. A lot of our programs have capacity. And then we have a number of our programs that don't have capacity. And Jeff touched on those. Swim lessons, day camps being a couple of them. As we're talking about, I think it was funny, our city administrator was talking about, I think it was day camps. And I think he said it was the most stressful 6 minutes of his year. I was trying to get registered for day camps. And he didn't get all the camps he wanted either. So that is, that was the kind of craziness that we're up against with some of that. So just real quickly, camps with capacity, and this is going to speak a little bit to hopefully your access piece that we were talking about earlier, is when we have capacity, we have everyone that wants to get in gets in, right? There's plenty of room. That's great. Time doesn't really matter unless you miss the overall time frame and you miss that big large window we have for registering. If someone has a challenge, whether it's language, internet, technology, staff has the time to work with that customer and figure it out, right? Like if we need to, we can work with a third party for language. We can work through, they can come down, we can talk to them over the phone. We just have time to work through all of that and get them registered, which is great. If expense and finance is a difficulty, we have a chance to talk to them and go, hey, we have a scholarship program, get them signed up and then get them registered at a reduced fee. That's all great. Now, our programs with capacity, that's where this is why we're bringing this question up, is to try to improve our process on this one, is, if you're quick and know how to navigate the registration process, you have a high likelihood of getting in. If not, you don't. And even if you're quick, there's no guarantees. There's people that are, like I said, ready, multiple people ready sometimes, and they still don't get in. That's a big barrier and a challenge because there's a lot of people not getting in. And like I said, I don't think it's equitable in the ones that are getting in the first place. So that's why we're kind of talking about this. If you don't already have a scholarship, this is with our programs without capacity. If you don't already have a scholarship, you have to register and pay the full price. So if you're on equal footing, everybody has to register. But if you don't have if you qualify for a scholarship but don't have one, you have to pay full price. That could be a real hardship. How do we address that a little bit? In a perfect world, every program has capacity and we have time to work with everybody. That'd be great. We find ourselves needing to develop a plan for managing programs with limited capacity to make sure that we are able to provide that equitable access. I mean, that's what we're here tonight talking about. We're not alone on this. Jeff just today shared a couple articles with me. One was from Eugene, Oregon, and Westminster, Vancouver, BC, that are doing this exact same thing. They're looking at the recreation registration process to see how they can make it more equitable. So it's kind of neat to see that others are in that same mode where we're at. Because if you're in the normal mainstream of everything, it seems just fine. But there's a lot of people that there are barriers, and we want to break those down. So it's nice to see that other areas and locations are doing the same thing. Sort of sharing what we're thinking. Once again, we're on the front end of this. I mean, like I said, that's why this is a great starting place. We've done work, starting place for this one topic, and it's great that we're just starting and being able to talk to you all about it. We want to continue to research and understand registration barriers and challenges. This is just the beginning of this important work, and ongoing discussion is going to be needed. We want to continue to understand the registration barriers and challenges, and it's just beginning. Yeah.
Have other considerations to partner with the food bank, since they have a lot of families who are already using their services, to give them the early registration, or to give them, like, to have them on a list so that when classes come, they're automatically kind of provided, especially since the magazine, the little booklet I'm talking about, comes out early so that they can talk to and let someone there know, like a form, you just circle what day and then they can be registered. So
Like partner with them so that they can help make their customers aware that.
yes, and also help the customers choose and then send that as part of that early registration. So partner with them to let their customers know, one, but partner with them to give their customers that early registration access. Because to me, the registration process is the biggest barrier.
Yep.
The knowing, we can do a lot for the knowing, but to actually register, you need a lot, unless your system's changed tremendously, you need a lot of support to get that early registration. So how do we give the families who we know need the support, early registration access to these programs?
Well, I think, as we work towards solutions, Laura, you're right. I'd say like a great option we need to look at, right? Are we looking at creating a model that does sort of allow for early registration? How do we do that? Do we look at a lottery system like some other cities are considering? You see that again, we're not landing on any solution, but we really want to start exploring, right? Is it an early registration? Is it a holding back some registrations to allow for not this rush and just this stop? So I think just even having this discussion and even more discussion tonight is really going to help us sort of point towards and come back. We'd love to come back to all of you with, hey, here's what sort of a solution is looking like. All of this pointing towards end of first quarter, we're going to be into summer day camp registration. Like I said, we're hoping with the additional capacity we're going to have in summer day camp and whatever this new approach is for registration, we're sort of excited to see what summer day camp registration 2024 looks like. And hopefully it's something we can both see successful and that camps filled up, but also successful in a little bit more of an equity result.
Dale, 2 questions from Shane.
Right, that's what
Yeah, I was gonna
too.
say, that was what I was also gonna say. Shay has some questions. I don't know, Shay, if you would prefer us to read them or if you want to come off mute.
Yeah, I can come off mute, but I just often put them in the chat so I don't forget. So one of the questions I had was whether or not the program actually had the capacity to that expansion capacity to include some of those facility changes, because I know a lot of times with capacity updates are required in order to accommodate all the people. And I think that if you all are possibly looking for more registrants or even to expand the registration process, then that may affect how the facilities will be used and the times and all those things, and even the space that's allotted to those programs.
Yeah, so I think if I'm hearing your question right, Shay, the capacity we're looking at adding next year through our camps, we will be utilizing not only our facilities, but we partner currently and will continue to partner with the school district in sort of utilizing a myriad of facilities to be able to accommodate that. And we're pretty confident we'll be able to have access to those facilities that'll allow us to absorb that additional capacity. And then swim lessons too. Zach and the aquatics team do an amazing job of the labyrinth of the pool schedule, and sort of adding lesson capacity where we can is, it's a labyrinth in itself, but certainly something we're confident we're going to be able to absorb.
Sorry, do you have a question? Oh, please.
No, just from a timing perspective, these have to be in place by X date. is to capture registration. Did I hear January 1 is when the registration starts?
March.
March for summer day camp. I mean, really hitting these super popular programs. We'd love to have
Some in place for next summer.
Probably
Summer's registrations.
end of January, so we're able to
Share.
test it, work out the bugs, share what the process is. Yep.
And I wasn't aware that fourth item considered an early registration system for City of Issaquah residents. So it's offered outside of our own residents.
Right now, registration is open to everybody, and mostly Issaquah School District.
Okay.
We have an open registration. We have when you look at our fee structure, there's a fee and then there's a resident discount. So if you're an Issaquah resident, you don't pay the same fee as a non-resident, but there's not an access to residents only for a certain period of time. So is that something we want to consider?
Yeah, that could be on our high capacity or the ones that have fill up. Well, this is a crazy meeting because it's like my slides, you guys have beat me to all my points in front of me. It's crazy. I know. Sorry.
So I have a question that if I need to go look for the answer someplace else, I can do that because for time. But I don't understand why there is a fee for a class plus the fee to have access to the community center. No?
There's
not
with our programs.
Okay, so then if I sign up for a class, then there's no other fee.
No
correct?
For
Okay.
summer program, we just pay for the summer day camp or the swimming lesson.
But you don't have to be a member of anything.
No, some organizations have that model where you have to pay.
Is that model? We don't have that model.
Okay. And how do we come up with the pricing? Because like, for example, right now I was looking at your page and it's $64 to attend one class once a week. But if I went to like a private gym, I could access that same class 3 times a week for, the month, and it would be a lot less. So how do we come up with this pricing?
Which class are we talking about?
Okay, for example, Zumba.
Yes.
Zumba meets at 9:45 on, I guess, Thursdays. And for 1 month, it's $64 for that one class.
Yeah, and we work with the instructor on the instructor sets the price on that because that's not that's not our staff. They run Zumba. We work with Zumba to run the class out of like the community center. So the instructor would set the price on that one.
We work with, it's a great question, Lucretia, and it's super complicated because Brian and his team work with, in some cases that program is directly offered by city staff. In other cases, it's a contracted program. So we're working with the contracted instructor.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is that I find that to be very expensive.
Okay.
Right, $64 for one class a week for 4 times, that's quite expensive. So that to me is about access. And then also the times that it's offered. All of these classes are, from what I can see, offered at like 9 a.m., 9:45 a.m. And typically that's when people are working, right? So who is the target population? Who can be at home at 9 a.m. to take a class, right? Like why not have classes that are offered when people get off work, for example, or early morning?
All really good questions. I think this in some ways gets to Shay's question indirectly as well. And that community center up there is a big box with limited amount of square footage. And we can't offer fitness classes at all times that we want to because
Volleyball.
other things are happening. We're offering and trying to provide such a myriad of services that the residents want, and trying to find some balance with that between pickleball and basketball and preschool classes and
we work really hard to provide access for everybody, but everyone would probably tell you they don't get enough. And, I would say, hey, well done. We've upset everybody equally because they're all getting some, but not all. If somebody is getting everything they want, you have one happy group and not. So everybody gets something. Like Jeff said, with the limited resources, we did the best we can to make sure everybody's getting some access to that. Real quickly, if you don't mind, I'd love to share just some of we talked about some action items that we're doing for capacity increasing. One of those was adding the day camp, like we talked about in 2024. We're going to add a day camp that will increase our ability to take more elementary age and middle school age children on. We don't even have a middle school program. We didn't have one this past summer. The school district used to run one for quite a while. We recognized that there's a gap in that age group and much need for that age to be served. So we're going to be offering some camps to offer some possibilities there for that middle school age group. Go ahead.
Here, day camps, which means summer. Is there a possibility to increase after-school camps or some kind of activities for especially the elementary school age students to have an opportunity to participate in after-school?
Yeah, the after school, like on-site after school is usually run by the school district. We have an before and after school program which is what?
Totally filled, and we have wait lists of 100 plus. So we have lots of kids not able to access those programs.
Which school is this at? Which school?
Every single.
Yeah. Because of that, our capacity is limited to staffing and resources as well.
And that's
We
what I was-
added a before and after school care program called Schoolhouse Rec that we run out of the community center. We have and because it's local, we're able to, kids from Clark Elementary, we worked with the school district to get a bus stop for Issaquah Valley stopping by here. So we have, and because we know that those wait lists are so long, we created a program for that.
Makes sense that in all of the upper ones and
Yeah.
all of the ones. So the transportation becomes limiting, but we have a huge number of parents desperate for before and after school care.
Yeah.
And just, some of it is beyond the city of Issaquah limits.
Yeah, but
Because our district is wide.
Right.
So getting those two is great. Sunset is harder because many of those families are still Issaquah residents.
as Brian said, we've added a before and after school program to complement what the district's doing. We're continuing to look at middle school programs, working with Issaquah Middle School and how we can sort of partner with them and what some of they're seeing as after school needs are. They've started an exploratory work looking at what middle school sports looks like. Brian's taking part in that team.
That
To
task force,
see
yeah.
how and is there a role that we can play in supporting that? So.
So is there capacity for that after-school care to also expand?
We have room in our after-school care right now. Yeah, and I don't know, it's always the most popular right at the school because it's so convenient, where everybody's taking their kids, it's near your probably, your home, your location, everything. So we're trying to get some of those wait lists, but it's still, we advertise it, market it, and it's, like I said, we still have capacity in ours. We could grow a bit in ours. We also this summer, as far as camps, we're piloting a 2-week Spanish-speaking camp that we'll be running, hopefully, out of Issaquah Valley Elementary. We're working with, the principal there, the Circle, Human Services. I had to write them down because there's a lot of folks we're working with on that. Issaquah Valley, the school, Circle, and then some interested parents. They have a program that's a Spanish-speaking program at Issaquah Valley. And they kind of recognize that, hey, over the summer, a lot is lost. We could run a couple-week camp and keep the kids in that program, especially sort of tuned up.
But also make it available for the entire community.
Yes.
So that, in essence, 2 weeks of Issaquah day camp, but it's a Spanish speaking.
Yeah.
So we're really excited to pilot that this summer.
And then lastly, something else we're doing is, we talked about the pool and the swim lessons and all that. We have a pool feasibility study going on right now to look at what would it look like? Could we expand, if funding is a whole other topic, but could we on that site expand the available water that we could provide to the community there? And that's the question, right? So, and as we're looking at it, we have a significant amount of space up there that could be used, and we could add, we're still finalizing the report, but it looks like we could add some additional water up there.
Some pool capacity.
Yes.
Perfect. I know you had a question.
Yeah, I wasn't sure who was going to come up in your presentation, but do you have data on how equitable or inequitable the last few years of registrations have been as a way to sort of guide the next year and future years?
It's a great question. Yes, in terms of sort of, we can take a look at who has been registering, who has sort of been threading that needle, especially of the really popular camps and classes. I think it's a really important metric for us to look at. I think honestly, what we found in some of that is those who know the secrets, know the ins and outs, know how to thread the needle, are the ones that have been getting in. And so, yeah, I think it's a really important data point that in some ways is going to confirm, wait, this doesn't feel like everyone's got a fair shot at getting this.
I know that you've, sorry, go ahead.
I haven't gotten into some of those programs with my kids. That's how hard it is to get in. I just want to make sure, and I do know the ins and outs. I know it all, right?
Yep.
And yet you still, so my question is, there's two. What are the challenges to going to a lottery system? And what are the challenges of giving preference to those who need it the most?
Yes.
Great questions, yeah.
Yes and yes.
Right?
And like I said, just, as we're at the front end of this, those questions you just brought up are exactly why we're here talking to you all
Yeah.
today, is to say, hey, we're thinking about this as a possibility.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? And that's.
Well, I think lottery's the way to go. I'm a hiker. I always have to run into lottery, and I haven't won it yet. But that's the way it is.
Wonderland.
I would say maybe before jumping, so lottery, early registration, those are solutions, right? And so I'm thinking about who, given that there is so much more demand than supply, who are or should be the priority populations to consider? Yeah, and so I think you might want to start with kind of defining, given there's just so many more people who want these programs, and so figuring out who needs it the most, and then understanding directly from those groups what their pain points are with this process, and then thinking about what solution would meet their needs more so. Because I've never been successful. So I think either with solutions or making. So I totally, you can tell we're a passionate group.
Yeah.
Well,
Also,
this is so helpful.
so one of the
It starts
questions.
with an honest look in the mirror, right? So we need to find a way to do better. Sorry.
No worries, I was interrupting you, sorry. One of the things I think I've also asked is, you're right, that is the question. If this is a community center, if we're prioritizing some groups or others, what happens to other people who are trying to, all of the city residents trying to access the program? And so not by the city. And so what I think my thoughts have always been, where we've wondered is there capacity for another group like a Boys and Girls Club to come, whose entire intention is to support and provide additional resources? Because if you're truly at capacity and you can't meet the need of the average Issaquah resident, then it seems hard to say we're going to take all of these slots and give it to this group, because then it's creating now issues and problems for other groups. There are many bubble groups that we might not be reaching. So I think my question is also, if at any point we realize that we can't, like, doing a lottery, I understand why, but my first reaction is no, like, we're not going to solve who I'm trying to address. And yes, and so, but I see that point, right? So if that is the case, if that is not the main goal for the city's intention of having the recreation services, is there another solution that we can help bring in to specifically target that one group? Because I feel like there's a huge need in our city, and it's getting bigger and bigger. Literally, I see it by the month and the year. And so my question is, by the time we react to it, there's going to be a lot of families really struggling.
No, really good feedback. And as we've, again, begun to wrestle with this, I think we recognize it's probably multiple solutions, right? And one of those is just that point, Lorna, right? We as the city Parks and Community Services Department, we serve a lot of roles. You saw the overview, but when it comes to delivering programs, we're really both a direct provider, but we're also a broker, an advocate, a facilitator of other groups coming in, right? And it kind of to your point, where as a direct provider, we can't possibly do this all on our own. So how are we providing our direct programs, but also advocating, cheerleading, supporting other recreation providers who might be helping to address some of that capacity?
Because I get the question from families, why doesn't the city have a Boys and Girls Club or a YMCA program in the city of Issaquah? I'm like, I don't know, I'm not the city.
Well, I can tell you from working in other cities, it's not a city decision. Right? The city doesn't say,
Come on down.
come on down or
They
not
have to
come
come
down,
down.
right?
It's
So,
property.
right, previously I was the parks director in Sammamish, and it took work with, it's those agencies' decision to come to town. And similarly, I spent 10 years as a director in Kent. A YMCA is there now, but again, it's not the city saying, great, you get to come. They have their own business model and business decisions to make.
But can we court them? Can we say, hey, we have?
We can, yeah, in terms of any and all groups, and those two cities are really good examples, right? That it starts with, let's define need, let's define, are there other agencies that we would love to have some assistance with? And
Especially an agency that their whole focus is families that really need that support.
Yes, yeah.
Because then I think it feels like, oh, sorry,
Yeah.
she has a question.
Shay has just had I've marked the questions down, but I don't want us to lose track of Shay's participation in the chat here. So Shay, you've got a comment. I'm going to invite you to share more.
Yeah, but some of the questions I've actually gotten answered in the process of the conversation, because I know a lot of the questions are kind of jumping ahead of the slides. But one that I didn't really get an answer to was with relation to the ratio of residents to non-residents participating in some of those programs that you all offer, and if it was possible to try to filter in pre-registrations into like the registration process for school, since that tends to be an annual process. Because I think that's an easy way to kind of, I guess, pre-touch on who may or may not need services, even if they don't necessarily take them on at the time that they're offered.
It is. Yeah, in terms of resident and non-resident, and again, it depends on the program, but I would say predominantly our youth programs serve primarily in family-related programs. Residents make up Issaquah residents make up a high majority of participants in most of our programs.
So just one thing I'm noticing with some of the solutions like the lottery system, even like an early registration system that's focused on residents and non-residents, those are more so fair or equal in focus and not equity. So I just really would encourage you to think about who needs these programs more and how to design for them.
I like that, Pretty. You're right. We talk about it, but you're right. Understanding the difference of equality approaches and equity approaches, and how are we looking at?
That's a great question.
And it seems like there's a lot of different ways to look at who needs it, more than it's, definitely income. I'm also thinking it's not just the cost, but it's the location. So I remember driving my kids to Newcastle on the way to Seattle and basically taking an extra hour in the commute to drop them off for childcare because I couldn't get into the camps here and, things like that. And so certain families without access to cars or transportation, that's really important and a deal breaker for them. So just thinking about how you define who needs it the most.
One more question. Do you all partner with King County DSHS? Yes, for the Section 8 housing. And are you all able to work with them for families who have Section 8 housing to provide them information on scholarships and basically looking at early registration or like ways to help those families who have Section 8 housing. Because it feels like in Issaquah, we've increased the amount of Section 8 housing. And I'm wondering if we can make sure we're reaching out to families living in those houses to make sure they know about the program, because that's one of the things we find out is they don't know what resources are available
I'm
in
sure,
the city.
yeah.
So how do we educate that group? And I've heard it's really hard to educate the families through that, but just one.
No, it's great. Well, I would say we do in places, but I think what we can do better. I think one of the really nice things organizationally about having Parks and Community Services and having Human Services right next to Recreation is we've already found some really great opportunities to utilize our Human Services relationships with those agencies, those providers, to make sure we're positioning some of our recreation offerings and vice versa. And what's great is that's gone for both youth programs all the way to so many of our programs at the senior center, right? And how are we making sure that sort of both of those groups are utilizing their resources to getting information out.
And one question, the two that filled up, so the swim and the camps, that was not a resource issue, right? You had resources available. It was just space at the pool and
The pool is space.
pool space.
The day camps, I would say, is resources.
So-
Like I said, we had budget and plan to run X amount of camps last year. They filled quickly. We have requested extra budget for next year, which is where, I think it's been approved, I think, or at least it's moving in the right direction, for us to add additional capacity to address that need next year. So, and we do run up against some challenges with staffing. I mean, like everybody else, staffing is really, really, really hard.
Yeah, I would say it is a resource. We have to be careful in that we can't have an unlimited number of spots because, any quality camp is really dependent upon quality staff, quality camp staff, all of those,
With that, I'll make a shameless plug. If you know anybody interested in working as like a gym supervisor, basketball official, a day camp person, send them our way. We love to talk to those people. So that is a shameless plug, and I will always do that at any opportunity I get, because we always need people.
Please recognize this as you share that we really value, we are we're probably the largest teen employer in the city, and we see that as a program in and of itself. We love being a first employer, and what a teenager learns as a day camp leader or as a referee or as a lifeguard whatever they turn pro in as they grow up, they will take those leadership skills. And so please.
We view our part-time and regular staffing, our youth staffing as leadership programs. I mean, we're developing them into they're beginning to grow into young leaders, right? Absolutely. Like right now, we have basketball, right? So, I mean, that has, I want to say, 60 to 80 staff, probably part-time and regular staff that we use. It has 1,700 kids we're looking at playing basketball. I mean, so we have, that has capacity, we can do it, right? So that's 1,700 kids playing basketball. It used to be pre-COVID, it was 2,200, but things have changed a little bit, and it's continued to grow back up to its original numbers. But we're sharing the challenge we're finding with like I said, with the limited capacity programs, and that's where we're realizing that it's not equitable, right? And we have tons and tons of programs that we run that we're able to accommodate all of that, which is awesome. But yeah, this has been tremendously helpful to be able to share that problem and to hear just some of the discussion around it and get some great ideas from it.
So.
Do you two have what you need from us at this stage, I guess is the question?
I think very helpful. I would love to come back in January and, again, with a goal sort of end of January for us to feel like we have something in place that's ready to pilot for 2024.
Might have a David, Brian, and Jeff January reunion. So.
Good.
Do we have an idea of how many people are on those wait lists? Like, so to give us an idea, like, are we talking about 20 people? Are we talking
Summer
about
day camp,
2,000?
summer day camp average, probably 50 on the wait list.
Yep, that's what I would.
50.
50.
And I will also tell you that if you go on the wait list, there's a very high likelihood you will be accepted. So those parents who are going in
Some of them are really, because you
Taking
just,
spot.
they're taking spots. It's really problematic,
Ticketmaster.
in my opinion, because then I don't get in a couple of them, but I put myself on the wait list. And I know I'm not that high up because sometimes it's a day or two after, and I'll get called a week or two before being offered that spot. So honestly, I don't really know that many camps that I've not been able to get in. So that means that 10, 20 people before me did not stay. So, and you have to put a down payment. I don't know if you get it paid. Like, it's only $20 to $30. It's very, very minimal. I don't know if they get it back or not, but it's always interesting to me that spots open up.
I don't think we charge for a wait list.
No.
No, deposit.
Deposit for the, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and you're spot on. A lot of, sometimes people grab, 'cause I don't know, they do school district and us, and then I think they choose, yeah, so that does happen.
Yeah. Sure.
Vacations, so,
Yeah.
yeah, we do the best we can to manage that wait list. You're right, it's a great example, but I mean, looking at last summer, we had still, again, 40 to 50 on the wait list.
Yeah.
Each week. So again, I think our goal of adding some capacity, looking at a registration process through these really important lenses.
And we run a ton of different camps that just, so these are, the camps we're talking about are the camps that are run by the city, which we run, and I forget, like I think last year was 100, 120 kids per week. But we also have a lot of sports camps and Lego camps and STEM camps. We have a lot of specialty, and I forget how many camps, but it's a lot. And so sometimes it may not be our camps specifically that are available, but some of those other camps might be. That's a little tough if you're, the sports camp's available and your kid's not a sports kid. Well, that's a little bit more challenging, but all day of sports when you don't like it is, that's not fun either, right? So. No, it's not what we want, no.
You didn't get into kindergarten.
I don't like Legos, but I got into Lego camp, yes.
Yeah.
For everybody involved.
But you guys gave us some great feedback and input, so thank you so much for that. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Great.
And look forward to telling you how it comes. Like I said, we're at the front end. You're getting it like as we're talking about building this piece, so it's very helpful.
Sure. No, you're good to go. I would encourage you to stop sharing your screen. Last meeting, we had someone leave the screen. But
That's awesome.
I think we can make these last two items mostly work with the time we've got remaining. I think the very last one should take me 2 minutes. I'm going to tell you when our special meeting will happen.
And I see Christina's joined us.
Christina has
And
joined us.
Christina.
There you go. Think I'm
Awesome.
off.
Thank
Thank you so much. Yeah, have a great night, everybody. It's great meeting you all. And I'm just in a little house over there, so if you're ever around, please knock on the door, come visit.
Yeah, that's also where Jeff's office is, so if you ever want to,
Yeah.
that little house.
Exactly.
I love it, it's so pretty.
Yeah, it's been around for quite a while too. And I can remember back in the days when we did, because I'd worked for the city for like 20 years. And I remember those days when we did those day camps that way.
Oh my gosh, my husband and I would like take a chair and sit over there. And then when they started giving us tickets, like a number, we're like, what is
And the
this?
staff was just all behind the scenes trying to input everything, yeah.
No.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Bye.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Jeff.
And we'll take it away.
Oh.
Other business and announcements?
Other business and announcements, we've got 2 items on here. One is around community engagement for 2024 work plan. I feel like we've been talking about community engagement and starting to engage the community. And so I think this will be an agenda item next month for us to really talk about, like, what do we want to do in terms of community engagement? How do we want to judge the community? What are the groups we want to prioritize? What might that look like? But wanted to sort of plant the seed and start a little bit of a quick discussion in case if anyone had any thoughts. Unfortunately, I feel like Tony, who is the one who is always talking about how he wants to do community engagement.
Right there.
Oh, good, thank goodness, isn't here this evening, but wanted to hold a little bit of time to start that conversation, knowing that we're gonna spend hopefully about 40 minutes next month doing some planning for the upcoming year. So just wanted to open it up for discussion.
If I could add one thing, I think, so there's there's thinking about, so community engagement, how we want to do it, but for what purpose? And so is it to inform certain things that we want to do? Is it assessing community readiness for a citywide strategic plan related to equity? What do we want to do with the information we're getting from community? So that's also kind of the other thing is like how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it, and for what purpose are we doing it for?
Yeah. If I was in the community, I would want to know who exactly is on this equity board. So give us a chance to, what brought us here? Why did we want to be on this equity board? Do we have a personal story that we want to share? I think that would fascinate the audience. And then from there, just maybe talk about our 2024 thoughts. I know we're still trying to get our hands around that. But making a personal connection, I think, is hugely key for the community to understand who's sitting on this board and to just allow for some questions.
Can we have a speed dating of meet the equity board members of the city? And that would just be people eating, sitting at different tables, and then we going table to table, introducing ourselves, talking, saying who we are. And then at the end, say, and this way we'd also have a chance to ask, well, what kind of questions do you have regarding the city? So speed dating going both ways. We answer questions for them, and they answer questions for us. But involving food.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously. Yeah, I think another way that we could do some of this engagement is just showing up to some of the events that are already happening, right? For us to find a way to prioritize that if it's possible, right? Because I know that when I have attended some of the community events, the people in attendance are very grateful, right? Like they're really excited. Some of them even have questions and or feedback and or something, right? But they do want to be engaged. So if there was a way to, I don't know, maybe get like a calendar to us, Dale, where we can pencil in, like say, hey, I can go to the one in March, but I can't make the one in April or whatever.
Yeah.
And that way we have that commitment to the community.
Yeah, like that. I went to the one where Mayor Polly spoke. I think it was at the Hilton off the freeway there. It was open to all businesses in the area, and she introduced the different councils and the different boards, and she commented on equity. So like if a couple of us were there, say, hey, there's a couple members of the equity board here. Have questions for them, walk up to them and ask some questions. But a calendar.
Did that happen or?
It did not. She made the announcement, but there was no offer to say, if you'd like to speak to Ray, who's a member of the equity board, come over here and ask what's been going on with the equity board.
So you were there in the capacity as a business person, not as.
No, I was there just to be educated. I want to know what
Okay,
businesses
got
are thinking. She was talking about a strategy for businesses for 2024. And I should ask her what was the outcome of that. Is it to open it up to the types of businesses that we touched on that today?
And Lucretia, I was going to say, I actually attended a couple events because I was there for the welcome event and I was there for the Juneteenth, and I didn't feel like that was a good venue because there were other things already going on.
Yes.
So it was hard for me to say, and by the way, it was about the event and it's not about us. That's why I think I'm happy to continue going there and just saying, hey, I'm there so that they plant a seed. But it's very brief. But I think for me, I want something that's a lot more deliberate as a starting point is introductions. Like why? Why are we here? Who are we? To go from
So maybe
there.
instead of attending as a participant, being part of a booth,
Yes.
right?
A
Like
booth.
in the welcoming thing, instead of us walking around like we did that day,
We'd have
but having an equity board booth that we can human rather than man, but you know what I mean? That we can, and then some of us can walk around, because I like walking around, right? So, yeah.
I think that's a good idea to have a booth so folks know
Yeah.
where to go if they have questions.
Right, because I know that they couldn't even find my badge, so at the welcome event.
Oh,
So-
where's my?
But anyway, so like nobody necessarily could know that I was there in that capacity.
Yeah, like the big events like Salmon Days and the farmers market, there's an opportunity there to just have a booth and.
Right. And I do have to warn you all, sometimes like the people that come up can be not so friendly. I don't know how else to say that, right? So I would like some sort of training as to what can I say, what can I not say? Because I tend to deflect because I don't know what else to do, right? Like I'll say, well, there is a way for you to communicate with the board. You can come to the board, But I would like, kind of like, what am I supposed to say,
Shay just put I would call this an idea, not just a question, in the chat here around developing some sort of one-pager explaining what the board is, what it does, how to reach us, so we have something that for instances like that as well.
Yeah.
Some sort of product, yeah.
I think Monica put something together.
I'm sure there's some.
Because it was at one event.
I have
For
not
sure.
seen that.
Yeah.
I have not seen
Because we have a webpage, like we have we're under boards, so.
So what I'm hearing here is like, you all are seeing this as an opportunity to understand the pulse of the community as it relates to equity, or giving folks an opportunity to get to know who's on the equity board. I guess I was thinking of another approach around like something more strategic, like how do we want to move into more equity related work and move the city along, and understanding where residents are willing to go, and then having the government structures advance in that way, right? So like what is the city ready for, and how can what are the residents wanting and ready for, and how does the government organization catch up or position itself? I don't know. So
I think my feelings are people, especially people of color and other people who have not historically have had good relations with cities, are not going to come up and say, hey, by the way, Preeti, this is all where I'm struggling, and I'm thinking that you're going to listen to me, one, partner with me, two, and then help me find solutions. No one's going to do that unless they actually trust you and they know who you are.
Yeah.
And so to me, the first step always is build relationship and share who we are and the why before anyone's going to say, oh, and now, because the people who are going to come otherwise are going to be the ones who are like, I don't believe in equity. I don't like that word. And then I know what I say because I've actually had that said to my face, but we're trying to be also targeted as to who we want to come and seek us out to have those conversations. But I don't know how to do an event where people who need it are attending is always the biggest challenge.
It seems like there's almost, there's like an arc of an approach over the course of the year, building up to maybe being ready to have that strategic conversation, but it might be more of a combination of both. Maybe we see this like the speed dating event comes mid-spring after we've had a chance to spend some time in some places, getting to know people. And then we sort of have this event where we bring those connections in. Because I think part of it also going and being in spaces, sort of like inviting people to the traditional public meeting. Love that we've had people here, but like there's not a lot of chance for dialogue. And so I think we need something to invite people to come to ultimately, and we're doing some of that, like I'm like in this meeting as an equity board member. It could almost be like, January, February, March looks like that for a meeting in April or May to get us ready to then introduce this bigger strategic conversation. Because I think that the hope would be that we're able to put together some sort of roadmap. But I think we do have some, I do think we're still moving in a veil of obscurity a little bit in terms of people knowing that we exist despite this beautiful view out onto the road here.
And Dale, is what you're describing what we did through Human Services that was called community convening,
Mhm.
community conversation. Okay.
But I really like the speed dating structure within that. Like I of course love getting to like the thinking about what it's gonna feel like in the room. And I don't want to rush ahead to get there because we probably should be thinking big picture strategic about like to what end. But I do love
Because I think in that we can tell our story, who we are, answer questions, and then also say, what are you looking at? What are you seeing? What do you need? And asking, because the speed dating is a two-way communication. So you are getting that, and you're getting it in smaller groups, and each one of us, if you go 2 by 2s instead of individually, because that can be overwhelming, then we're getting a dialogue, and each one of us might even hear something slightly different, because when you listen, like me listening to you and then Karthik listening to you, we might pull different parts of your story and then coming back and say, this is what I heard, this is what I
And it
heard.
helps in debrief.
Yes.
Shay's got both a great comment in the chat and her hand is up. Oh,
You're muted.
You're still muted.
You're muted.
Trey remuted you, I bet.
Just kidding. So one of the things that we do at my work that we find to be really successful is a program called Connect, Challenge, and Change. And basically, it's a panelized format where we could possibly have the equity board join in and just answer 5 simple questions that the community might have about the equity board and give them an opportunity to ask questions. And everyone can chime in or choose not to chime in if you don't have a comment at the time. But we make it really simple. It's about 30 minutes, and it's designed to be a listening session for the community at large versus a direct way to versus a scare to people who are on the equity board. Because I understand that like maybe doing profiles might not be in everybody's interest, or possibly, sharing personal information about ourselves might not be a big thing that everybody wants to do. However, in a Connect, Challenge, Change, we could simply ask the question, like, what do you all do? Or why do you believe in equity? Or why do you think Issaquah needs equity? And those kinds of thought-provoking questions can kind of explain who we are and why we're here. And then give the community a chance to maybe email or follow up and say, hey, I really like that. Or, hey, I don't understand why you all do this, and give us some room to kind of get to the tough questions without having someone attack us for what we're doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I also think your comment in the chat around doing an interview with the Issaquah Buzz podcast video cast is also a really great option. Those get watched.
I've been listening to them.
Yeah.
Because
I love this podcast.
Yes.
Good job to them.
Like our YouTube channel has over 1 million unique views, which is like legit for a city our size having that much engagement. And so I think also using some of the avenues that exist could be great as well. There's one other thing one of the other things that I was thinking about, I think that Preeti and I have talked about, is also learning from the other groups that have sort of grassroots gained more traction within city decision-making. So specifically environmental efforts over the course of the last 30 years in this city. It could be good to bring in that advocacy group to talk a little bit about how they gained ground and sort of got the city to start doing things like creating a sustainable purchasing policy, which there aren't many other cities our size that are doing that.
But that's an outside group, right?
It is, but ultimately the board itself can't be the only voice pushing for change, I think.
But are we, because I'm trying to sort out what we're trying to accomplish, right? And I have a background in community engagement, right? And I have really strong feelings about it. So I'm sitting here holding it back, trying to sort it out. Because here's the thing, it's a lot of work. This is staff. This is hired consultants helping. If you're really doing community engagement, If what we're trying to do is let people know we exist, then that's a great thing for us to take on. But to what end? Do they build relationships? And I've actually talked about this before here. Do we have them build relationships with board members who are not decision makers and removed, we advise at best, and we leave. We're not permanent. So you really want them to be building relationships with staff, right? You really do. And so we need to be taking that into account when we're devising a community, because I'm going to just say it again, this is an equity issue. This group is being asked to not only work on policy making and advising around policy, but to actually go out and do community engagement, right? It's staff who's been doing it for the other groups. It's an interesting look at equity. Yeah. It is in the way it's set up is that we're supposed to go out and talk to our constituents or groups that we work with, right? And that's not a bad thing to do if it's easy to do. But if you have to build it, that's interesting. That's an equity thing. Yeah. So I think we have a lot of work to do to sort out what we really want to do, which goes back to where you started.
Yeah. Well, and I think that also calls into question, is our scope overly broad?
Yes.
Because it's like all things equity when the other ones are a little bit more focused in maybe like policy or plan development, and we have all the things, and does that really set us up for success?
Yeah.
So what I was hearing though, which I was getting excited about, was like thinking about Dale's coming around the park, right? So I think maybe the first quarter or something is around letting people know we exist, having like the booth or something like that. And then somewhere over the course of time, May, June, doing stuff like the speed dating or what Shay said around the Connect Challenge Change to have like a slightly deeper engagement. And then we see if there's readiness to talk about, okay, city residents, what do you want with respect to equity? How do you define it? What should it look like in our city? And then start to figure out what the there is and where we want to move to as a city. What are we ready for? And maybe that takes a year. I don't actually know like how long something like that would take.
My only comment is we're approaching 2 years, and we have not been out of this conference room to hear other voices. I mean, we've been in meetings, but I just want to be able to hear what do our residences, what are our neighbors?
And I don't think we need to organize the hearing session, to your point. I think we need to be part of the group that's also listening with other city residents, because the city residents are going to be hearing it strongly, but sometimes we're listening to it with a different perspective.
Yes.
So for example, at today's meeting, I'm coming in with what I've spoken to families with in my experience, but it'd be great to hear a listening session from families who have tried to register and have not succeeded or succeeded, whatever their experiences are, right? So that we know that voice before we're responding to them, because right now, like we just happened to be that I had some experience and some of you had some experience, but if you didn't, it was kind of hard to really engage in this conversation and to see what some of the barriers were. So I agree with you that it's they need to be the ones listening, but we also need to be the ones listening, because sometimes you're listening to what they're saying, but without really understanding what other parent or not parent, other community feedback they've received on that topic.
You're hearing something that maybe the staff member's not hearing.
Yes, or they heard stuff that we don't know about. Also going back to Shay's comment about your comment about the art, I think I always feel like when it comes to Juneteenth, we're struggling at the last minute to come up with some kind of activity. So I like the idea that we're talking now, because I feel like 2 years ago, we did do a panel that the city had organized and the equity team was presenting for Juneteenth. And so that could be part of a community conversation, and we can start advertising for that way in advance. And it's not really us, and it could be a city or some group maybe a local group organizing this conversation piece, and we're there to listen, because I think 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 2020, that Juneteenth in the community center, I think many of us were there just listening to what the students were saying.
Yeah.
The youth, I should think.
Shay, your hand is up.
And I just wanted to provide Preeti and Lorna with some clarification on Connect Challenge changes. They are always two-way. So typically when we do things like that, we will start with those that are on the side we're talking about. So for example, with LGBTQ+, we start with those who are in that community. And then we switch over in another session and talk to those who are not in that community. And then we kind of merge them together. And we try to do it in a really concise way by making sure that we ask those questions that people want to know about, but we also give everyone an opportunity to kind of speak up and say what they, what some people are thinking, or what some people are questioning, or what some people are trying to figure out when they come to these sessions. So I do love that you kind of pointed that out already, because that's kind of the whole point, is to get all the sides that we can to contribute to the conversation.
Just noting time, we're already over. One of the next steps that I'm gonna take is, I really like this idea of getting clear on like, when is the community engagement the city's already planning happening?
Yeah.
So that we can be present in those spaces as we deem them to be relevant to us. So I can carry that forward. I mean, everyone's doing their work planning like now through January, so we can definitely have that in hand. We're gonna also be work planning between now and then, so we're gonna do a little work planning before we have that calendar, but we can be thinking about that as part of where we wanna be and where we wanna be listening throughout the spring. But we'll come back to this conversation as part of our work planning conversation. Just wanted to plant the seed, because I think it's a good one. It's like a juicy topic for us to be thinking about. This second item, I'm just going to mention, I know it says 10 minutes, doesn't need 10 minutes. Our meeting in January is January 3rd. I don't know about you all, but that's not a date that I can make. Currently.
Pulled it up and I was wondering, okay.
So I'm going to propose that we meet the second Wednesday. I wanted to see right now if folks knew already that either works, or like knew that they absolutely can't make second Wednesdays work, but that is the 10th of January. And great, I will make that happen. It will show up as a special meeting, so it's not on our normal night, but we will run it just as we run any meeting that we have.
I can't guarantee I can make it, but it doesn't matter.
Fair, it is months away. Great, that is the last topic here for other business currently.
All right, so I think with that, we are ready to adjourn. So the next meeting is currently scheduled for December 6th?
It is.
Okay, December 6th. And I adjourn this meeting at 8:08 p.m. Have a great evening, and thanks for the lively conversation.
Thank you, everyone.
Dale, I just checked in. I do have an event on that day, so I won't be able to attend that meeting. So.
It was wonderful to see you, Shay. Welcome back. Christina